Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. Today, I have an interesting part about crafting your life. And this is something I've actually talked before on the podcast about, but I'm so intrigued by this. And I guess what I have learned as I've looked at other people's journeys and their trials and the walk through life is that the process, no matter what the struggle is, the process and the tools that we use are so much the same in every single thing. So no matter what somebody's journey might be, it's applicable to you and to your personal journey. And it might offer a way for you an insight perhaps you've not thought about before. And so to that end, today I have the beautiful Donna O'Donnell Figurski. How are you today? Welcome, Donna.
Hi, Mary. I'm fine, and thank you for having me here. It's really exciting.
Well, you're not a newbie to podcasting because I understand you have your own podcast.
I do. I've been working with on another fork in the road. That's the name of my podcast, and it's on the Blog Talk Radio um, um, program. And so yeah, and I've been doing that since 2014.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I've topped 200 shows, but I don't know how many. My husband usually keeps track, and I usually just forget it. Let's just move on. But
Well,
yeah,
you're very experienced, obviously. And I love the title of your podcast, Another Fork in the Road.
right.
Be- because if I have learned anything, Donna, it's there's not just one. We think, oh, I'm through this big trial in my life and that's the last thing. But there's always another one and another one,
Another one.
another one. So let's tell my listeners a little bit about you and about your started off as a teacher and then on into what happened next and how you ended up writing your book, which is behind you, Prisoners Without Bars.
And it's in front of me too. I have to show the real book.
Oh, yes.
The real book,
Yeah.
complete with pictures.
Oh, well, we
Yeah,
love
cool.
pictures.
I know. So yeah, I was a teacher for 30 some years, and during that time, David and I raised two children, and in 2005, a big fork happened in our road. And like you said, Mary, there are tons of forks. There are all kinds of forks. The fork when you meet the guy you want to marry, when you marry the person you're going to marry, when you have children, there are all happy forks. And then there are sometimes you have to go down another path. And sometimes you don't have that choice. You just have to do it because you're going to sink or swim. I chose to swim, you know. So anyhow, what happened in 2005 was that David had a traumatic brain injury. And yeah, I know. I had never even heard of brain injuries before. I know a lot of people hear about concussions, and you get your bell rung or you see stars, and then you're back up walking away and doing whatever. But there's a lot more to brain injury and to concussion. But for David's brain injury, he ended up getting one in the most awkward way. I've heard other awkward ways too, but this isn't a funny, awkward way, not funny. But he was exercising. David was a very health conscious person. He took his vitamins every day. He ran 20 miles a week. He did exercises every morning, including Tai Chi, before he went off to work. And this particular morning, instead of doing the normal 12 chin ups in the doorway, he did 13. That 13th chin up, see, there's something about 13, that 13th chin up caused him to have a brain injury. Something burst inside his head, and he had a subarachnoid hemorrhage. I didn't have a clue how serious it was, but I called the ambulance and I got him to the hospital. And his neurosurgeon, the one that met me at the door, said, "You're very lucky. He's in good health. He's very good, basically, yeah, good health because he saw his brain injury on his home computer." So he goes, this is a quote. I'm Dr. So and so. He didn't say that part, but I'm Dr. So and so. And your husband's in very good health. He'll make a great organ donor. And I went, whoa, I know. I mean, that's exactly how I felt. And I'm holding everything inside, thinking, no, 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 no. He's not going to be an organ donor. Mm-mm. You're here to get him better. I mean, I didn't even realize the intensity of everything at that point. But he gave him a 1 in 600 chance of surviving the first operation. So I had to go with that. We had a choice. We could have gone and got another CAT scan done, which would have taken time and given him that 1 in 600 chance, or he could have gotten, and this is in the book, and I'm not positive I have it right now, but it was a very high percentage, not as bad as 1 in 600 at that point, but a very high percentage of, if he immediately went into surgery, of making it through. So I signed on the dotted line and said, go do it. So that's where our big fork happened. We didn't choose that fork, but we were kind of thrust onto that path.
So,
And
can I
yeah,
ask a question?
sure.
At that point when David had this injury and you're making these decisions, was he conscious? Was he helping you make these decisions, or did you make them on your own?
No, he was not conscious. Once he got into the bedroom that morning, he had his hand over his right eye, and the pain was intense. As soon as the paramedics came, David went into a coma. So everything was on me. I had to make all those decisions. And that was just the first, because within 2 weeks, I had to sign two more times for open brain surgery for David. And he was I mean, he was totally unconscious. He was in coma. So I had to make those decisions. And now let me just explain. I never made the decision on where to go for a restaurant. We always talked about it. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? We never had, I never just actually made my own decisions without conferring with him. As a teacher, of course, I did. I made all my decisions in my classroom. So I'm not saying I can't, but I'm saying our partnership was one that we did everything together. So here I am now saying, yes, open his head again. Yes, do another brain surgery on him. He's still here. Like, holy geez. So it was pretty rough.
So he obviously survived.
Yeah.
He was one of the 1 in 600. And how many years now since this happened? 2005. So we're talking nearly 20 years.
We're hitting into 20 years this January. Yeah.
Wow.
I
And
know. It's crazy.
well, in 20 years that he's lived when he could not have lived. And
Ex-
because of your strength to be able to say, yes, we are going to fight and to not give up on David, he's had all this additional time.
Yeah.
And so I think that that in itself is a great lesson for everyone, is that just to have the courage to say, yes, I'm going to fight, we're going to fight, and to move on.
Yeah. Like I said, Mary, though, I didn't have a choice. I mean, he's my husband, he's my best friend. And so yeah, I'm going to do everything possibly that I possibly can to make his life as easy as it can be. That's not to say he doesn't get, I don't jab him and all that, but I do want to make his life easier. It's very difficult. What he's going through is very difficult. Yet he's very gracious about it, and he tries to make my life easier too. He understands what I have to go through and what we're missing together as a team because of his injury. And so, we're still hand in hand working through whatever we can.
So, what is David like now? What things can he do, and what things is he unable to do?
Well, David is cognitively fine, and that is the best
Oh,
thing, I think. Okay?
wow.
Because David was a professor at Columbia University when this happened. So that would have been really hard if his cognitive abilities, if his understanding, his comprehension, his communication skills were damaged. I think that would be the most difficult. So we're fortunate there. His injuries are all revolve around physical disabilities. He had a brainstem injury, which is back here, which yeah, which that controls, it's almost like your mother, well, your whole brain is your motherboard, but I mean, that controls all of your physical things, your walking, your balance. And then he also had injuries to his optical part of his brain. So he sees double and tilted and blurry. And, but the brainstem part with the balance is one of the biggest things. He can't walk on his own very easily. Let's put it that way. He cannot walk outside on his own ever. Inside, he can walk a few steps here and there. He relies on a rollator now. So his vision is impaired. His balance is extremely impaired. He has ataxia in his right arm, which makes it just go wherever. And a cute little story about that. I had him visit my classroom, my first graders, because I wanted them to be sensitized to people that have injuries. And so he came with his in his wheelchair, and the kids, of course, were a little scared, but we talked. I had talked to them and prepped them about what to expect and everything. And then once David got in there and started talking to them, they just like, okay, he's just a guy, you know. But he was talking about his ataxic right hand, and so he said, "Anybody want to shake my hand?" And of course, they all looked a little scared, but then there's always that one, that was, I'll do it, and goes up and shakes his hand. Well, David's hand is all over the place, so the child has to go, catch it. And every child shook his hand that day. And I think it's a good story because, most people are scared of people that look different. When you see somebody on the street that has a disability, maybe they're missing a leg or maybe their face is squished up because of a stroke or whatever. People look at you and they're curious, and so are kids. And so I wanted them to know that people with disability are still people. They're still have feelings and emotions just like they do. And I wanted them to be able to realize that, it's okay to have a disability, and some of the kids in the class did, and just be accepting of other people with one.
Ah, I
Yeah,
think you are so right, Donna, that it's not that we reject people or
right.
that we, I would say for the most part, I mean, there are some of those people that want to reject them and want to make fun of people, but
Yeah,
for the most part, we stand back and stand away because of our fear. We don't know
exactly.
how to interact with them. We don't like, well, are they able to talk, or do they understand me when I speak to them, or
Hmm.
they just do not know how to relate to them. And by giving your first graders this opportunity, I think that that's one of the best things that you could have done for David and for you and for your students. Absolutely.
Thank you. I thought that was very important for them to know him
Yeah.
as a person, not as a person with a disability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had several people with disabilities on my show. I recently had someone that had cerebral palsy on.
Uh-huh.
And there was that moment when I was interviewing them, I thought, will my listeners have the patience to listen and hear his message? Because he speaks slowly, it takes him a while to get the words out.
Right.
And yet his message was so profound that sometimes we don't take a moment to allow them to speak their voice. Does David have all of his audio skills?
He does. He has selective listening, though. Blame it on the brain injury. No, he actually does have all his audio skills.
And what about his bodily functions? And what about eating, those kinds of things? How much are you involved in that care?
Okay, David is he does all his eating on his own. In the beginning, he was on, he was being
Sure.
intravenously fed. But once he got home, he was able to eat, but it's not a pretty sight. And
Uh,
frankly, it's still not a pretty sight. But he
yeah.
does it on his own. In fact, he gets his own breakfast and things like that. He can do that kind of things. He usually likes vanilla yogurt with some chocolate sauce in it, or some cranberries, or or granola, or things like that. And so he just prepares all of that himself. But he does have swallow disorder, which means that he
Oh,
can aspirate, and that's very, very dangerous, because if you aspirate,
yeah.
you could die.
Yeah.
So that's really a concern. He also, because of his injury, his one side of his face, his right side, is kind of paralyzed in a way. His face is distorted, where one is his normal looking side, and the other side has stayed 57. You know, it's really funny. And so, because he's really very, no wrinkles, everything's perfect on one side of his face, and the other side is a little scrunched up.
So I guess the lesson is that if we would stop talking and stop using smiling, then we could remain porcelain. Is that that?
Maybe, maybe. But he'll bite the inside of his cheek, he'll bite his lips and his tongue when he's eating. So it's gotten to the point now, in the past, I think maybe 2 years, where David and I do not speak during dinner or any time that
Oh,
he's eating, because he
yes.
can't. You know how you can't chew gum and walk and chew gum at the same time? Well,
Yeah.
David can't talk and eat at the same time. So
Yes.
so that makes it really difficult for him. So when I was sitting at the table with him, I mean, I go chit chat 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 chat, all the time, so, and it became difficult. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, because he'd bite himself. I'd see, he wouldn't necessarily tell me, but I could see it on his face, like,
Yeah.
oh, you know. And so I decided that, okay, if I'm going to sit here, I'm going to talk. So now I just sit a little bit away in my chair right next to the table. I mean, at the table, but and then play a game, so that I'm engaged. I'm not going to talk to him, and we're not going to have those accidents. He can still bite his lip without my talking to him. I'm not the only cause, but but so that's those two things, are things that are difficult for him. Another one is bladder control. His
Ah,
Something in his brain also affects his bladder. And so when he feels like he has to go to the restroom, it's like, gotta go now, right now. We
yeah.
called it kamikaze runs in the beginning, when he first had this, and I had to get him into a wheelchair and get him off to the bathroom really, really fast. Now I don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. I don't have to feed him either. I used to have to do that, but I don't have to do any of that. He's able to take care of pretty much his own life. He also takes care of the laundry in the house. He does the dishes,
Wow.
So yeah, he does a lot. He makes the bed every morning. He does a lot so that I don't have to do those things, which normally fell on me when we had a relationship that was a working relationship, when he did his things and I did mine, but now it's kind of turned. I've taken over all the bills. I have to do all that, all the financial stuff. Do I like it? No. But he can't do it. It's really, really difficult for him, and everything is slowed down. So it takes him a lot longer to do everything. So,
So, in
oh,
your book, I'm just thinking in your book, obviously you talk about all of these physical things that have gone on and changes with David. But from the title, Prisoners Without Bars, I
right.
know that there is a lot more depth in there. So, what were some of the emotional and mental challenges that you encountered and have overcome or grown through that were not involving the bars of our physical body?
Well, I think, let me explain the title a little bit first.
Okay.
I'd originally had called it Prisoner Without Bars, meaning that David was a prisoner of his body. He was unable to leave the house and do what he wanted to do. When I was talking to an agent about the story and she had read it, she said, "No, this is not about just David. This is about you. And
Yeah.
it's not prisoner, it's prisoners. You are a prisoner too, without bars. Yeah, I can go in and out of the house and do whatever now. But the first 5 years, I couldn't. I
Right.
still would go to work and do my errands on the way home from work, and then I'd be home here at 6 o'clock, and then I would be unable to leave him alone ever. Now, once he started to go back to work, because he did go back to Columbia, he did go back after a year and a half and went back to his laboratory, and and then he was picked up in the morning. I think I was still home, yeah, before I left for work. So another professor friend picked him up, took him to Columbia, made sure he got into the building okay, and then he was contained. He was trapped, maybe,
Right. Right. Right.
in a situation where he can be safe. And people were around him, and then he would return home. Then I had to be there. So after work, that's when I would make sure I was always there. So I wasn't able to go out. It wasn't until 2010, November of 2010, 5 years later, that I decided to go because I felt like, and David was pushing me to do this. I wanted to go to the theater I'm an actor, a stage manager. I work in the theater. I do a lot of
Yeah.
stuff there. I really wanted to go to our local theater to the meeting and see if I can get myself involved. And I did. But we were connected by our phones. Always, always, always have my phone on and ready to
Yeah.
go. So that if he needed me, I was really only about a mile away because that's how close the theater was. So that's when I first started going out and doing things. And that's when I became freer physically to be able to go out and do things. Um, Mentally, prisoner, mentally, I think my whole life now, then and now, still revolves firstly around David.
Right.
Secondly, around my little pup. He's a new little pup we just got. So, but firstly, everything revolves around David and his care and making sure everything is all right with him, and then I move on from there. But
Right.
it's gotten a lot better. I'm not whining. I'm not crying. I'm just saying it takes time.
Yeah.
And I ever think that this was going to last a lifetime. When our neurosurgeon, the second neurosurgeon at Columbia, told me that it could take him about 5 years before he'll get back to 95% of what he was. I was devastated. 5 years and only
Yeah.
95%? Are you kidding me? Boy, I would take that in a heartbeat right now, you know? But
Right.
it is what it is. And so you well, the old adage, you can have lemonade, make lemonade, or have the sour lemons. I take the lemonade.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think as I listen to your story, Donna, and David's story, and other stories similar to this, whether it's been an injury, a traumatic injury in war, or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just in a car accident. There are lots of ways these kind of things can happen to us. But it seems like that both parties, the one that was injured and then the caretaker, have to come to this point of feeling like I'm a victim. Why did this happen to me? And what did we do wrong that we deserved this? And you come to this point of either you're going to stay stuck as a victim or you make a decision to move out of that,
Yeah.
first to survival and then to thriving. And so tell me about that process for you. Were you ever angry, or what did you go through with that?
I think I handled it in a weird way that I'm not sure would work with everyone, but if it does, do it. I kind of put my head in the sand and kept
Uh,
busy. I wouldn't think about it because when I did, then I would get sad. If I thought about the things that we couldn't do any longer, and this will still be today. If I do that, if I stop and say, geez, I really want to do this, but I know I can't do it because of David's injury, that I'm only asking for heartbreak. I'm only asking for sadness. I'm going to be depressed. Why can't I go traveling? My daughter's in Scotland right now. She's over there for about 3 weeks. I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. That's one of the things David and I had planned when he retired, that we would travel. We had done some traveling earlier with with scientific talks that he gave around the world. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be fun. We'll go do this later. Well, thankfully, we got to do that little bit because I did get to see some, but I also know what I'm missing. And, the thing is, there's nothing I can do about it. He can't do that traveling. I'm not going to, trying to push it on him. It would be miserable for both of us. And you just kind of say, okay, look at the bright side. I still have my husband with me. I told every neurosurgeon before they took him in and put him under, opened his brain again, I don't care how you give him back to me. Just give him back to me. Of
Wow.
course, I don't think I knew whatever to expect, but still, I wanted my husband back with me. I wanted him to be with me to make those decisions that we were, hopefully would be able to continue to make. And we do. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because I said to David yesterday, we just had our floors done, and there's a little strip between the doors transom that has to be painted. A little tiny strip that should be black or brown or a shade of black or brown. I could have made that decision in a heartbeat. I mean, really, it's nothing major. I went and got paint strips and brought them home to share with David to see what his
Ah.
opinion was. It's like, come on, really? So, yeah, I mean, it's just things like that.
I love that idea that you had, that because I can tell you, Donna, there are people that faced with that decision, that if they can't have their husband back that they knew, they would rather not have him back. I mean, that's as brutal and as honest as you can be.
No, I hear that.
I don't want anything that's going to restrict my life.
Yeah.
And you stepped beyond that. That kind of love is not common. And I love hearing about stories like this with you and David. And that comment, it's just hit me like right here. I don't care how you give him back to me, just give him back to me.
Yeah.
Unconditional love, Donna.
Well, let me tell you, I met him when I was 16 years old. He was 17. We were at a dance, and this will explain some of this, I think. We were at a dance. It was 12:45 to 11:45. The dance was ending at 12, in 15 minutes. I was leaving the dance with my girlfriend to go home to her house for a sleepover. And this guy taps me on the shoulder and says, would you dance with me? I took one look at him and said, oh, yeah. But I had to go check with my girlfriend first because she had already left the building, left out, gone, was leaving the dancing area. And so she goes, yeah, go ahead. And then we were going home. Her brother was picking us up. But anyway, and I danced with him for 15 minutes. And the next morning when I went home from my friend's house, I told my mother, I'm going to marry him. How do you know that at 16?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I did. And 4 years later, I married him.
Wow.
So that probably, gives some indication of why I said, I don't care how you give him back to me. Just give him back to me.
What
And
an
he's the guy,
amazing
we've,
love
we've
story.
grown up together, basically.
Yeah. I love that love story.
Thank you.
So, as we come to a little bit of the end of our podcast, I would love for you to share with the listeners, what is your idea, the greatest lesson that you're teaching in your book? What do you most want people to learn from your book?
I think I want them to know to be patient, to to these things happen in our lives, and a lot of things happen, like you said. And it doesn't have to just be brain injury. It can be a divorce. It can be a death in the family that devastates you. But time is your friend, and you have to just be patient through it and live through it and be as positive as you can, because uh, you sometimes just can't change the incident. Yeah, I'd love to be able to turn back the clock and not have had this happen, but it did happen. And so you live through it as graciously as you can and in the best way that you can, um, and still try to keep your happiness about you. I think I think that would be a good answer. I don't know.
Well, I tend to be someone who asks the questions they've not heard before, but
Yeah.
I love that patience. If we had one thing that we're lacking in our society today, would not you list that up there among the top five?
Oh, yes.
It's because we want what we want, and when do we want it? Now.
Yesterday. No,
We don't have
yesterday.
we don't have the ability anymore to postpone gratification. That's why our
Right.
credit cards are maxed out. I see that dress or I see this and I want it when? Now. Even if I can't pay for it, I would rather be paying a third more the cost for that if I can have it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So patience is such a big thing. And I was in an interview just the other day, and someone asked me if my husband, whose name is John, if John could want you to work on one quality or habit, what would it be? And I immediately knew. I said, oh, it's patience. He would want me to be more
Kidding.
patient. Yeah.
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 Wow. What would David want? He's sitting here looking at me, giving me an evil eye. I don't know. Well, you know what? I think he might say patience too, because I think that he's shaking his head. So, all right. I mean, I think,
Ah,
yeah, because I think that is one of the harder things in life. I mean, and I know this, and I tell this to people on my own show that you need to be patient, but I know that I'm guilty of it too. That I'm not being patient sometimes. I know that. And it makes me angry at myself when I find, when I realize that if you had just given a couple extra seconds or whatever, maybe it would have worked out better. I don't know.
yeah.
So yeah, patience is, I think, is a big one for, that's what I try. That's probably why I say it in the book, because, or want that in the book, because that's what I need. I,
Oftentimes we
I
write
try to.
about those things that we need. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I try to be patient. I really do. But sometimes you just get overwhelmed and tired. You just get
Yeah.
so exhausted about doing life. And the patience kind of goes by the wayside. I'm much more patient in the morning, when I'm fresher,
Ah,
and as the day goes, maybe, yeah, then it gets a little less. So I guess I hit that. We're going to have a discussion after this talk today. We're going to have to dig a little deeper into this area.
well, I wish you well in your talk with David. Donna, thank you so much for sharing your story and showing us your book and getting us a little insight into David and your love. I think for me, if I take away one thing from this today, that's what it's going to be. This
Oh,
kind of profound love that you have for each other. And I've only been married to John for 7 months.
oh,
So
cool.
yeah. So
Yeah, well,
this is not our first go round.
uh-huh.
And at this point in your life, as you well know, you get to be pretty set in your ways. And we've had to like take a look at what is more important, this beautiful love that we found and a life together, or having things that our way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a give and take. Yeah.
It is a give and take, and I wish you well, and I wish the very best to David. And thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thanks, Mary. It was really fun chatting with you.
And my listeners, if any of you would like to get the link to Donna's book or to follow her on her podcast or on her website, we have all those things for you at the end of the podcast, and you can easily glean on to her and all the things that she and David have learned through this life, that they have spent a life as a prisoner, but how they escaped to a life of joy. Thank you so much for being with us, and may this week be full of a lot of crafting of a meaningful life for you. Namaste.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.